Hey, you're listening to That Time We Woke Up in a Podcast and Had to Explain Manga, our heated adventures over analyzing manga we find interesting, otherwise known as the OverMangaCast. I'm Matt, and we are in the second week of No Read November, where the entire month of November we are not reading any manga, webcomics, comics, whatever. We are watching live-action anime movies. Fun. This week we've got a real treat for you. We are watching the live-action Death Note movie. Oh, that's actually pretty... by Netflix. Oh, well, you don't have to watch it. You can just hear us suffer. So, enjoy the episode.
Welcome back, everyone. It's the OverMangaCast.
And our No Read November, where this episode we delved again into the wonderful, wild, awful world of live-action Netflix anime adaptations of popular anime.
Not necessarily Netflix, just live-action adaptations.
Yeah,
But another Netflix in this particular
This in
episode.
particular is a Netflix adaptation.
as always, at the top of the episode, we talk about our familiarity with the franchise. I was a weeaboo in the early aughts, therefore I watched Death Note. It is just a fact of life. I watched everything straight up until the end, even though Season 2 kind of lost me, though admittedly Maximum the Hormones OP did introduce me to metal, so I appreciate that. But yeah, no, I watched all of Death Note, I read some of it, and that's my familiarity.
I think I can save us all some time. I don't think any of us have not seen all of the Death Note anime.
Yeah.
Cool. We're all on the same page. We've all watched the Death Note anime in its entirety.
And we all enjoyed the Ramones.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, but how is that related?
That movie slaps. I mean, the music slaps.
The Ramones are good, but how does that have to do... You mean Maximum the Hormone? Why are you talking about the Ramones? I don't understand.
I'm sure there's a bit here, but I don't know what it is.
I'm confused as well.
So yes, we open up as we classically do in Death Note, where a young prodigy by the name of Light is given the mystical Death Note.
This time, his name is Light Turner. Also, we have a montage of things establishing that we're in Seattle, including the Space Needle and the Seattle Police Department and other neighborhoods of Seattle you'd recognize if you've been there, but I understand if you haven't. But it's...
I happened to be away grabbing a drink when the Space Needle was on screen, so I thought it was Detroit for half a second.
This movie is very Seattle.
It is very Seattle, yes. And we quickly learned that this is, despite what Jay might think as some disingenuous marketing, this is not a straight adaptation of Death Note from either the manga or the anime. This is a similar concept, but set in a wholly different universe stroke timeline. It's in Seattle.
Yeah.
Light Turner is not the straight-laced boy genius. He is a fairly smart high school kid with a loose set of morals.
And the differences that were made were really good adaptational changes. I'll go on record and say I agree with Jay that the marketing presented it as if it was just going to be an adaptation of the original Death Note, and that's the reason why I avoided it for the longest time, because that sort of thing usually goes badly. See our Full Metal Alchemist review. Honestly, I think the adaptation of Light's character was pretty freaking brilliant. Because it's live action and not animated, there is a layer of suspension of disbelief that's taken away. It's the same element that, like, the Disney musicals work better in animation because of the level of suspension of disbelief being different. And a character as unfathomably brilliant as Light Yagami is kind of hard to believe if you're not in an anime universe.
Which is perfect, because the Light Turner is your average smart kid in high school. Like, the jocks pick on him.
He's a weenie nerd. Like, that is made very clear very fast.
The first scene we see of him is him getting beaten up because he's been doing, like, 15 kids' homework for them.
I don't know if this is telling on myself a bit too much, but Light Turner is the same kind of chuny that I was in high school, of smarter than most of your classmates and thinking you're cooler than you really are. Now, I didn't act on it the way that he did. I see your expression, Matt. Stop it. I didn't act on it in the way he did. I didn't confront bullies with, well, you got held back for 2 years, so if you hit me, you're doing child abuse. I didn't do shit like that. But that is what Light Turner did, and it quickly establishes what kind of person he is in the space of the American high school system in the 20-aughts.
Yeah, this is a very American movie. And, like, Light defends himself against bullies, as Sam said, by literally quoting, well, no, you're technically an adult and I'm technically a child, so if you hit me, that's child abuse. And I'm
that puts you on a list, Punch.
But yeah, you get socked across the face.
This person clearly doesn't care about consequences, but, like, the Light we're being introduced to is someone who thinks the letter of the law applies to everyone.
Yeah.
He's very lawfully minded. Like, he thinks the law is the paramount that even criminals follow to some degree. They just choose to disobey when it's convenient for them.
Yeah.
Not that it's something that
you can just ignore because you don't care about consequences.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So Light gets beat up.
Yeah, Light gets beat up, and this causes him to be delirious on the ground with the copied homework scattered about him. And so that is how teachers find him and find out that he has been selling completed homework to jocks.
Which, he gets sent to detention for an inordinate amount of time. Like, it's not said how long, but he's in detention for a while over the fact
it was just a day.
It's 2 weeks.
It's 2 weeks.
Was it 2 weeks?
Yeah.
I missed that.
It was 2 weeks.
The principal basically says, hey, why are you selling homework assignments? Like, are you not going to even talk about the fact I got knocked unconscious by someone? He's like, I don't care about that. I care about the fact that you were selling homework assignments. Which, in all fairness, is all the audience needs to know is about Light does not like the fact that authority is not adhering to his morality.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He has a very, like, the law is important morality that reality is, like, not more congruent with.
It's also insinuated that the fact that he's not upset, he's like, he probably, this is me just, spinning, like, the fact that he probably would be okay with him being punished. He's just like, are you also going to go off the fact that they knocked me out?
I did this, you can punish me, but are you seriously not going to even address the fact that I've been wrong?
I want all the wrong people to be punished because the Light Turner in this thing we've been portrayed, in this very, like, short intro, like 10 minutes, we are portrayed, this is a very lawfully minded person who wants, like, the bad people to be punished and the good people to get rewarded. Mm-hmm. Like, that's made very clear within the first 10 minutes of the movie, and I love that.
Yeah, and honestly, one of the things that I like most about this protagonist is he is such a spectacular adaptational protagonist, because one of the big elements of Light Yagami is one of his cardinal flaws is he believes everyone else thinks the way that he does.
But he's a superhuman genius, so nobody else can.
Like, he thinks that everyone else is just dumber than him, but has the exact same morality he does. Light Turner may not be what would frankly feel unrealistic, but a super genius in this setting, but he has that same cardinal flaw of believing other people think the same way that he does.
Except the problem is his cardinal flaw is he believes people are as moral as he is.
Yeah.
He thinks people want to do the right thing, and that's not congruent with the reality, is the problem with him. Which, in all fairness, in the context of the movie, is not really a problem, because it's it's an hour and 30-minute long movie. It doesn't have the time to go into that depth. Light's basically portrayed as right this entire movie.
Mm-hmm. And but like the thing that's interesting about it is this is an excellent example of adapting a protagonist into a new setting, but keeping the core of what makes the character interesting, and like keeping the core of the character whilst making him fit the new.
So basically, Light's been put in detention for selling homework, where suddenly magic nonsense happens as
we have to introduce my favorite character.
He drops an apple and the room starts like disintegrating,
exploding,
as like papers are thrown everywhere because William Dafoe as Ryuk has entered the scene, has eaten the apple, and Ryuk in this movie is effectively not Ryuk from the manga.
But he's so good. Willem Dafoe killed it in this role because Ryuk plays less like the bored god causing chaos on the human plane because it's something to do. He is the demon on the shoulder telling you to turn away from your better angels.
Yeah.
He's less of a Shinigami and more of a death demon.
He is effectively less of the Japanese, like, amoralistic death god and more like the Western style, like, devil on your shoulder, like, hey, Light, you should kill the people who wronged you. They did wrong. You should get revenge.
Hey, you hear that fight going on outside? Look, those guys are beating up the girl you're sweet on. Why don't you write one of their names in the book, Light?
I'll explain exactly how to do it. You just have to write the name, Light. Which is effectively what the next scene is.
Another thing, a cool Final Destination scene.
Another thing that made me really sympathize with Light Turner was he read the first 3 rules of the Death Note and then flipped through the other 97 of them.
Which is an interesting point. The Death Note Light Turner receives has 3 rules filled in, and then up to like 64 rules in. Which,
it's up to 100.
It's a lot of rules, of which some of them are things that Light Yagami figured out during his experimentation. So the assumption is that the Light Turner is not the first recipient of this Death Note because it already comes with names written in it. Like, he is one of several people Ryuk has convinced to, take up the mantle.
The other thing is, in the original... So, one of the things that's different between the 2 versions of the Death Note is that, it's implied in the anime stroke manga that, like, the names disappear. Because, I think, like, Yagami, like, does some test to prove that there's an infinite number of pages or something like that. Whereas in this Death Note, once a name's down, you can always read it that it's there.
There's an argument to be made that Light Yagami is also the first recipient of Ryuk's Death Note.
Yeah, that's also implied.
Whereas in the movie, Light Turner is
definitely not the first recipient of the Death Note.
Mm-hmm.
He is the first one to think about using it for something more than petty revenge, though.
Well, we'll get there, because he does immediately kill the bully through a Final Destination decapitation montage.
That is so good. This movie, to its credit, is not pretending to be the same property like FMA was, despite what Jay and Jake think of the marketing. This very clearly knows that it is a Western American horror flick and also a teen movie at the same time. And that becomes clear with this first kill in the Death Note, because Light writes down the name of the bully, and Ryuk goes, hey, what's the method of death gonna be? I don't know, decapitation.
Because the one thing that's established is if you are not very specific, Ryuk is the one who gets to choose how the person dies, and the Ryuk in the movie is very much, I want to make this death as interesting as possible.
Mm-hmm. It's still implied that heart attack is the default, but because this Ryuk is so much more active, or more specifically, this Ryuk is doing the work that is written in the Death Note, as opposed to the Death Note being the facilitator in the original series, Ryuk chooses things that are more interesting than a simple heart attack.
So, a woman walking home with her groceries has her bag split, which causes boys dribbling a basketball to trip and fall, dropping the ball. Another boy runs into the street, causing someone to swerve, causing another person to swerve, which causes the ladder on top of his truck to fly free and cut the head off of the bully! It's at the jaw!
It's graphic.
Yeah.
When we said Final Destination, we weren't kidding.
Yeah, it is very Final Destination.
And Light is appropriately horrified.
And goes
because
home.
Again, in this version, he is a weenie little nerd who is not prepared for this.
So he runs home to his daddy, who is still police chief? I'm not 100% sure that's correct in this.
I don't think he's prominent on the police force.
He's a detective, at least.
He's like a senior detective.
I guess he can't be chief because the people beneath him do not respect him.
Yeah.
Or he could be chief and they just do not respect him.
No,
that would be a weird take, but maybe.
I mean, this is America.
They don't go into it.
This is America.
He is, at the very least, a detective.
Yeah.
Yes. because he's called as such in the movie. Light goes home and is talking with his dad.
He's arguing about the fact, hey, are you okay with the fact the dude who killed mom is still running around free? You little whiny bitch. Like, it's a very tense dinner.
It's very...
Hey, son, do you want to talk about how one of your classmates died? Do you want to talk about how you let the guy that killed mom go? Fuck you!
Yeah.
No, fuck you!
Yeah, the father-son relationship is not great, but it shouldn't be, considering the situation they're in.
It makes it spicy, everyone. It makes it really spicy.
It does make it spicy.
It was sort of funny because, like, one of the things that I mentioned is, like, the least natural element. The movie is doing a good job of taking this, like, very wacky anime plot and making it feel grounded enough for a live-action movie.
Well,
the least natural thing that felt to me was that the dad felt a little bit, like, overly aggressive, but it's like, this is also a teen movie.
Yeah.
The parent should be out of touch and not understand
the thing I said to Jacob when he mentioned that while we were watching was, this isn't like a Death Note movie. This is like a teen high school romance, like dark romance kind of thing, and like
with horror elements. Yeah.
The point is the parents are out of touch and do not understand. Like, if they understood, that resolves the conflict.
Yeah, and it, like, that epiphany really, like, I was already enjoying the movie, and it's like, that was the one thing where I was like, that's a little bit of a note I have, but like, once you look at it from that lens, it falls into place perfectly.
At this point, you should understand, when he's having this argument with his father, this movie is not Death Note. This movie is a Death Note themed, like, dark teen movie.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And again, one of the things I really appreciate is that Light is that above the standard level of intelligence, but not actually the genius his 8th grade ass thinks he is sort of kid.
He's at least ninth or 10th grade. He goes to the senior prom.
I want to say this kid was at least like a junior.
Yeah, I went with 8th grade because Chuny.
But the thing that I really liked, because one thing that's important is, as much as he's not a genius, they do a good job of establishing he's smart. Because when he gets to his room, he pulls out the Death Note, starts reading the rules, and Ryuk shows up, and they have another dialogue scene, and Light starts grilling Ryuk on what all of this means, and what are, what's the catch?
Yeah.
Which, like, that's not a stupid thing to do. You should maybe do that.
Especially because William Dafoe's portrayal of Ryuk is someone who does not want someone to know the rules of how this works, because they might give it up.
Yeah.
He wants someone that's easily manipulated to kill as many people as possible because it's the most beneficial situation for him.
Mm-hmm. Look, kid, if you don't got the spine for it, just leave the book alone for 7 days and I'll find someone else to give it to. Maybe you're too much of a bitch.
He says that line at least 3 times in the movie.
Yeah.
Yep.
And specifically at points when Light is making not just, like, empathetic decisions of not wanting to kill people, but specifically when he's making smart decisions, which he does a couple of times throughout the movie.
Well, speaking of decisions Light makes, Ryuk does convince Light that the one thing he should do is, Light's mother was killed by a mafia guy by the name of Anthony Skormal, which...
Anton Sokolov? We're playing Dishonored.
Essentially, it's very much just random Italian name, because it's essentially just like...
he is a living plot device.
The police cannot catch him. He gets in this big fight.
He's an unliving plot device. He impales himself on a steak knife.
Which is what Light writes in the Death Note.
Yeah.
After he has the fight with his dad, who says, I can't do anything about arresting him.
I mean, like, the worst part is, they arrested him, but he got off on a technicality. It's not that they couldn't catch him, it's that they couldn't convict him. The law failed in punishing the...
Which, the Light we have currently is someone who believes deeply in the law, and the fact his mother's death was not avenged is a failure of that.
Exactly, yeah.
A failure that must be corrected.
Yeah. Which, that tone is exactly how the rest of this movie goes, which is great.
Yep. So Light falls asleep at his desk because he's a big nerd.
And then his dad comes in and is like, hey, you know that dude we both hate? He killed himself with a steak knife in a restaurant.
Isn't that funny?
Ain't that fucking hilarious?
Yeah, it's... I mean, in all fairness, if my wife was killed by a dude who killed himself in a restaurant, I wouldn't have a lot of sympathy for the guy.
Yeah, but it's disingenuous, because it's like, you didn't pursue the investigation to try to convict this guy. It just happened to be a happenstance of like,
well,
oh, isn't that funny? He happened to like, and he even acknowledges it.
Saved us the trouble.
Well,
isn't the karma like? Isn't it hilarious?
Like,
the karma happened to catch up with him. The fact that he died this way.
Well, yeah, he essentially, what Detective Turner says, Light's father, is that his mother was a hippie type, and he acknowledges the fact that the dude met his own end by unfortunate circumstance.
But his admission is the fact that Light is like, this guy's guilty. And his dad tacitly admits this. But his dad is such a hardcore, we have to follow the rules. And it's like, but this guy's guilty.
No, they all know he's guilty. But the fact is, what he says when he finds out this dude died is, your mom was a big hippie. She believed that karma would come around and take its own revenge. Like, people who do bad things have bad things happen to him. And according to, Light's dad, this dude fell on a steak knife and died in the middle of dinner. That's what he gets for murdering a person.
Yeah.
According to Detective Turner, his mom was right.
This scene is so awkward, and it's so good for that, because there is so much unresolved trauma for both of these characters, and neither of them really understands how to process it. So they're acting really weird because they don't know how they should be dealing with all of this.
No, it's almost like it's a father and teenage son who lost their
moral center.
The moral center and the mother in the relationship through traumatic circumstances. That's what their relationship is. Anyway, Light goes to school the next day and finds the hot girl he saved from the bullies.
And finds out that death turns her on.
Yeah, so
Misa Amane is Mia, I don't know her last name.
It doesn't matter. Her name is Mia. In the context of the movie, because it's a 2-hour movie, we do need to establish some things, and I'm fine with that. Light essentially walks up to her and is like, hey, you know that bully who was bullying you the other day? His death was my fault. And she's like, no, you didn't.
Look at this book. That doesn't prove anything.
Oh, well, hold on. Let's Google whatever the Seattle PD is showing as a recent development. And he convinces a armed robber who has hostages to salute in front of an oncoming car and dies. And she's like, oh.
Convinces. He writes that in the book.
Yeah. And Mia's just like, oh, you can kill people.
That's hot.
Yeah, not lying, because there is then a montage of the two of them killing criminals, establishing themselves as gods of the new world, and making out. That happens in the same montage.
Yeah, it's intercut between. Though, I gotta say, I really love, because again, this is one of those ones where it's like, the level of reality is different. Light goes up to Mia and is like, hey, I think she actually approaches him because she sees the Death Note, and she's like, "What is that?" And it's like, "You don't want to know." And she's like, "Okay." And she starts to leave. Do you really want to know? And it's like the level of desperation in it is so real.
Wait. It makes me seem really cool. Do you want to know?
And it's great during.
I promise, I look like a badass.
It's great during this montage. They come to the conclusion of like, oh well, if we're gonna make ourselves like some kind of god of the new world, we should need some kind of cool name. Should we have something real? And so Light's was like, no, we should use Kira, because it means killer in Japanese, to which all of us went, it kind of means that.
No. He starts with, it means light in like Russian or something.
And some other language.
Some Eastern European language. And Mia's like, that's way too obvious. It's going to get traced back to you super easily. He's like, yeah, but it's also like, it means killer in Japanese, so.
Kind of.
No, it's English.
Yeah. I mean, in defense of this, it's a stupid moment, but in defense of this movie, he says it kind of means killer in Japanese. It's still dumb.
Again.
It's the biggest leap in this movie by far.
Again, it's a pair of slightly smarter than average kids who think they're smarter than they are.
Yeah.
It's 100% on brand.
It's very fitting for the tone that is established. And he also makes a point of having a lot of, this universe is Kira's first victims. Right, Kira has come, this is his will. In perfect Japanese, in their own blood, specifically people who were not Japanese and did not know how to speak or write the language.
So anyway, because all these because all of these supernaturally based killings have happened, a character you might be familiar with by the name of L becomes involved in the investigation.
I love L.
We'll just say it right here, although it's definitely not important for the context of the movie. In this movie, L is played by a black actor. It doesn't matter.
He's a spectacular L.
He's a very good L.
He's so good. Oh my god, I love L in this.
In the context of the original Death Note manga, there's no reason L has to be Asian, so...
Yeah. Other than it being a manga.
Yeah.
Yep. You have anything to say, Jay?
No.
Okay.
The only critique I had was his candy choices.
He does snack on those weird multicolored bone sugar
and they're not good. They aren't good.
So L eats a lot of candy, but I got the strong indication that Netflix did not have the budget to get some official licensed candy, because everything he eats on is some kind of formed sugar that's not a name brand candy. Like, he's not eating M&Ms, he's eating sugar bones or
which aren't good.
I do appreciate that in every scene L is in where he's like in control being the master detective, they have set it up so that he has all of the fancy furniture of a 5-star Paris hotel, even if he's in the middle of a police dugout.
So I'm just gonna cut this off for everyone involved. Because this is an hour-and-a-half long movie, there is some reason L has deduced that the person who is Kira could only be someone from Seattle area, because the guy he initially killed was only broadcast on the local Seattle TV.
Okay, so specifically what it was is, every kill that Kira had done was something that you could get from a police database. So he narrowed it down to, like, you know, it has to be someone who has access to a police database. But the first weird killing was this guy who randomly decided to salute out of nowhere and then walk into an oncoming car. That was only Seattle-based, and that's how L narrowed it down, because everything else was also accessible by Seattle's police records.
But anyway, through that, L immediately pushes himself into the Seattle police force. He meets Light's father, James, and immediately vets him, and it's just like, hey, by the way, I've been tracking your son. You've been tracking my boy? Which is almost a direct quote, which is pretty funny.
Yeah, I do love how well they play off how much of a freaking weirdo L is.
No, in the movie, L is less super genius everyone respects and more like, why are we letting this guy do whatever he wants?
It seems like he keeps lucking into the right answer, but like everyone is extremely distrustful of everything L says it does.
Because one of the things L says is, I don't know what you're so concerned about, James. I had you followed for several weeks in order to vet you. So anyway, L has been inserted into the movie, and honestly, I love him. I'm so happy he's here.
He's a really good L.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We are convinced, or Jay is convinced, and I believe
I
believe
agree
her,
with her assessment.
that the actor who plays L is a massive weeaboo who got
just having the time of his life.
Yeah, he got the opportunity to play L in the Death Note movie and just went as hard as he fucking could.
Yeah, L commits. Every time he sits in anything, it's always the L
It's
pose.
always the L sit, yeah. You know the one.
The one that didn't look good when your friend in high school did it.
The one that didn't look good when you went to the anime convention.
Yeah. We know what you did.
It was me.
It was me.
It was me.
Elle is simultaneously the worst and best cosplay ever.
I want to cosplay as this L, because this L just wears like a half-faced balaclava the entire time. Like,
and a hoodie,
he wears all black. Like,
It is comfortable. I mean,
he looks comfy. And so, one of the things that proves that this L, his penis is not tiny, is that he's like, okay, so I've narrowed it down to Seattle, but time to prove my thesis. I'm going to go out on air and say, hey, Kira, you're a
Yeah. I am hunting you because you are a coward and a criminal no better than the people you kill. Kill me if you think I'm wrong. Do it.
And Elle stands there, not dying, and then says, all right, I guess you are a bitch. Bye.
Which I really appreciate, because Cell had the balls to go do it himself rather than have a criminal sentenced to death row to do it.
Mm-hmm. And I did enjoy this, because one of the important things that is a difference between the classic Death Note and this is that in classic Death Note, anyone who touched the book could see the Shinigami, but in this, only the one who is the holder of the Death Note can see and talk to Ryuk. So even though Mia does take the book and write names in it, she is not the holder. Light is. He's letting her do this. And so she can't see Ryuk. And that does prove to be an important consideration later on in the movie. Because Mia's like, well, we gotta kill him, right? And Light's like, how? We don't see his face and we don't have his name.
At which point Mia decides, well, we know the names and faces of other people on the task force. We can just put their names in the Death Note and have them either find L or kill him for us.
Mia, we can't just kill innocent people. I'm gonna hear the end of this conversation and then the next scene is gonna happen.
We're supposed to be the good guys.
But you understand, I can't get off if we just, start killing people.
That is 100% Mia's character.
And the first person they kill is some war criminal in ass backwards Nowhereville who is torturing prisoners.
I'm just saying, there's only 1 or 2 levels up from that. How do you beat that?
This is one of the biggest changes that this makes to the source material, is that Mia is a serious villain. And in all honesty, because of the amount of time that the movie has to work with, having that negative influence and having her be a devil on this Light shoulder really works for this medium.
The next day, despite the fact Light said that was bad, the agents commit mass suicide. And Light's just like, why did that happen? And I don't know. Jacob, do you know? The Wikipedia article is telling me apparently he's convinced Ryuk did it. I don't think the movie gave me that indication.
From what I understood, what ended up happening is Light immediately thinks of Mia, but Mia denies it, and Light then... It's the only other person who could be responsible for it is Ryuk. Because one really cool, and one of the coolest lines in the entire movie is Light, being the weenie little nerd he is, tries to throw his weight around when Ryuk is, being the evil demon that he is.
Being Ryuk.
Light says, and if you don't do what I say, I'll put your name in the notebook. And Ryuk just laughs at him. Oh my god, the performance. And he says, you're welcome to try. The farthest anyone got was 2 letters.
Here's a fun fact. My name has 4 words in it. The furthest anyone got was 2. Seriously, I can't stress this enough. William Dafoe killed it.
Oh my god.
The Ryuk in this movie is definitely some kind of all-powerful demon in the background.
As he should be.
Yeah.
Willem Dafoe's performance, but also the effects on him, it's not AAA effects or anything, but it looks really good for what it is.
Because Ryuk is kept in the shadows. He's never...
Yeah.
It brings the gravity that this deserves.
There are some cases where, though, and this, by the way, is a compliment, because there's the famous potato chip scene, and it's this is an inherently absurd situation. There was one scene that I thought was a good, there are a couple of cases where this movie will have these wacky moments that just remind you how crazy everything is, but one of the more subtle ones is after the conversation between Light and his father about the mobster dying, the door closes and Light and father's leave, and then Ryuk just hops into frame wasn't that interesting, audience?
Isn't this cool?
So anyway, the next part of the plot, after the FBI agents kill themselves in mass suicide that Light is never really sure about, but I guess he kind of just brushes off. Because immediately what happens after is Light's father, James Turner, goes on public broadcast and goes what's the matter, Kira, you bitch? You're not gonna kill me? Because L knows. L at this point is 100% sure it's Light.
Oh yeah,
it's Light.
We skipped over one of my favorite scenes, which is this movie knows that it is a Western movie because it has so many callbacks to like classic Western cyberpunk media, like Blade Runner. I made several allusions to Katana Zero while watching it, but this is one of those Blade Runner moments because Light is in a cafe having a like moment of crisis, and Elle just sits down across from him and says, "Sup, bitch, I know you're Kira."
Yeah, it's also everything is lit by neon.
Yeah.
Like, this movie loves neon whenever Light and Elle are together in a room.
I thought that scene was immediately after the police conference.
It is.
It was after.
But it's close enough that I'm just willing to go with it.
Yeah.
Because
you're right. I am wrong.
It's
on
because
the timing.
It's because
It's
Light
not killing James.
that scene convinced Elle that it's Light.
Yeah.
And he pops into the scene and he's like, "It's good to know that you have a moral line. This will make the negotiations more interesting."
Which is,
Look, I don't want to say that all of the neon between Light and Elle is bisexual lighting, but
there's... If the romantic tension between Light and Mia was not so strong, I'd say you were right, but...
maybe I'm projecting. But anyway, you were going to say something, Matt.
Yeah, so this scene in general between Light and Elle, where he's basically like, well, prove it, and then Elle's just like, I can't. And then they end that conversation, is what convinces Light, you know that guy I met briefly, Watari? I need to kill him. But not kill him, because I'm not a bad guy. I'm just gonna control him for 2 days, then burn the page. Because if I burn the page, he doesn't die. And then Ryuk pops in, you can only burn the page once to save one life. The context for this movie. And then Mia's also there and goes, I'm glad I was here for that rule.
Yeah, no, that's an important thing. The Death Note, specifically Shinigami, can control people wholly for 48 hours before the moment of their demise. So for 48 hours, the Shinigami can say what you do, where you go, and how you're going to end up in your final destination death situation. Bars, by the way. and then there is the whole burn the page, and that saves the person whose name was written on it.
Yeah, the Death Note in this story, basically, if you read the in-between chapter rules from the manga that explain the very specific rules of the Death Note in the manga, this Death Note follows almost exactly the same rules. The one big difference is that Ryuk is the one who, like, facilitates death, whereas in the manga, the book, like, it just happens because the book says so, and Ryuk doesn't really have much of a say in it. That's the one big difference.
Yeah. And so
we see all of one heart attack in this entire movie.
Yeah, we have one of the iconic heart attacks.
Quoted by Ryuk, I just found other deaths.
Interesting, yeah.
Light forces Watari to find out Elle's real name, because in fact, essentially he calls him up to immediately burn the page by like, hey, tell me Elle's real name, to which Watari goes, I do not know Elle's real name. He was adopted by the orphanage to create the world's greatest detectives. We burn all of their adoption records when we do so. Why would you do that? It's a direct quote from Light, which is a very good quote for anyone who's...
Breaking the fourth wall.
For anyone who's read Death Note in any form, like, the entire thing about Elle's orphanage makes no sense.
Why would you do that?
They are the perfect orphanage for fighting a group of people who work based on the Death Note, but otherwise, why?
Wait, you're telling me this orphanage is also in Washington State? What the f***?
It's in New York, technically, but...
Well,
okay.
But still,
That's why it takes them so long to get there.
Yeah, because you only have so much time before the
48 hours.
Yeah, you have 48 hours. And I don't know, maybe that has something to do with the reason that the orphanage was shut down, all of that insanity.
I'm just saying, it's not that they destroy them, it's just they specifically, like...
They left the records in the shut down orphanage for some reason.
But, like, why?
The one strike I'll take against this movie is Watari wanders around an abandoned orphanage that still has everything that was left in it.
All of the files still in it.
For, like...
It's implied that it was abandoned, it was not planned, like, they left
But
hurriedly.
then they don't explain why that happens at all.
Yeah, no, they don't. Honestly, They don't explain that in the manga either. This is actually, I take back what I said.
That's a problem
this
with
is the biggest leap in the movie.
That's a problem with the manga as well.
Yeah.
I'll agree.
We need Watari to fuck around long enough for the 48 hours to be up and for him to die.
Yeah,
which he kind of does. But not before Light and...
Well, L realizes that Watari just disappeared on him, and that's not normal. So we get... Honestly, I think my favorite scene in the entire movie, where Mia and Light are just having a dinner with Light's dad, and all of a sudden L just shows up, and he's like...
He just walks into their house.
He's like, you leave, pointing to Mia, you two stay, because again, at this point, L is completely convinced that Light is Kira. He's like, if you return Watari to me unharmed, I will take that, because like there was like an exchange that they had in their previous confrontation where Light understands how bad Ryuk is at this point, and he also understands that Mia is maybe not the person he thought she was. So
I love this, by the way.
Trying to back out at this point.
I love this, by the way. It feels realistic from a teen movie perspective, because it is Light being infatuated with this girl, sacrificing for her in ways that are super detrimental and are not going to actually get you the girl, by the way, listeners. and then, as soon as he does the thing that she likes, which is murder...
Red flag,
he starts getting in a relationship, and he rapidly learns that he's not as hardcore as she is. Like, he's all about, I'm going to kill for justice. I will be the god of this new world and make a just society. And she's just like, I can kill people, dude. That's hot. Yeah. Murder, folks. That gets me off.
I'm just saying, murder boner versus justice boner.
Yeah.
Not compatible.
That really is the long and short of it, though.
Anyway, the next part of the plot is Light is still being followed by FBI agents because they got more of them, and now they're going to the winter prom.
Well, no.
Which, by the way, I love because it's nothing but blue and silver. My favorite aesthetic.
There's something still in the scene where Elle is confronting Light at his house, because Light's father is like, get out of my house, you bastard, how dare you? And he is very, very aggressive with Elle. And Elle immediately pulls out, I have a search warrant and backup outside. This conversation is still happening. I know you're Kira. I know you have Watari. Give him back, and I will take that position. I will take that into consideration in our negotiations as a position of strength. Because again, earlier, Light was trying to soft back out, and he was basically saying, Elle, you can't prove I'm Kira, but if I was Kira, you don't understand what I'm going through right now, and you want to help me. If I was Kira, and at this point, Elle is saying, I will take giving Watari back as a position of strength. Give him back right now. But Light obviously cannot have this discussion right now. So
you don't understand, Walter. I've never driven a car before.
At which point, Elle like reaches over the table to grab Light. And I love this scene because Light's father grabs him and slams him into the table. It is an extremely violent and uncomfortable scene. But the look on Light's face is the big key, like, moral divide that the two of them had in that first extremely awkward scene is Light was saying, you weren't willing to bend the rules to do the right thing. And his dad just assaulted, technically, a superior officer for his defense.
Yep.
That is exactly what Light had asked him to do. And Light didn't think that his father had it in him.
Light wanted his father to go against the established hierarchy for justice.
For his mother.
Well, specifically for his mother, but overall for how his mentality is. I want you to uphold justice. I don't want you to uphold what people think.
Your hierarchy.
The rules don't matter if they don't enforce justice.
Yeah.
Rules, by the way, are a super common trope in the background of this.
Well,
there is a moment where Light is running from the cops, essentially, and in the background of the high school classroom he's in is something that says the rules.
Well, like
it's like, hello, Metaphor, I'm hitting you on the head now.
The beginning scene is like breaking the rules because, like, well, it benefits me and it's not really hurting anyone.
They weren't gonna do their homework anyway.
Like,
so
he's benefiting.
I might as well make money off.
Like,
of
he's
it.
not hurting anyone, and he thinks that's okay because that's his morality.
Oh no!
That
these
is justice.
people who probably aren't qualified are going to graduate. Like, how is that going to affect the school?
These people are not as good as me. Cool. I don't care.
I might as well make money off of
Yeah.
being smarter than everybody.
So, and again, I absolutely love this movie's interpretation of L because he is
Unhinged.
unhinged. L in the anime was this weirdo detective who had a whole bunch of quirks and was super smart and blah, blah, blah.
After my own heart.
I love L in the anime, by the way. I don't mean to disparage him.
I love L. That only solidified
Yes.
in the movie.
L in the anime and manga is perfect for the anime and manga. This L is the movie L, and he's perfect for the movie. Again, great adaptation.
Movie L is a broken child who is being chaperoned by someone
Who
He's
is now
codependent
gone.
with.
who is
Yeah.
now gone. Yeah.
And he has very clear codependency issues.
And the second Wataru's gone, and also Wataru has been calling Light at, like,
Weird hours.
yeah,
Intermittent spans.
to be like, I have not found the files yet. And then finally he, well, no. What happens first is Mia and Light, because Light is being followed by FBI agents, goes to the Winter Formal, otherwise known as the Winter Dance, which is just
Winter dance.
snowflakes and blue and silver everywhere.
My aesthetic.
And
I loved it.
the main thing is Mia wants Light to wear a top hat.
Yeah.
Because yes.
Because misdirection. Remember, this is Death Note.
Because when they get to the Winter Formal and all the kids are dancing together, I'm like, I've never seen a more accurate interpretation of a high school dance of people awkwardly standing like an arm's length apart from each other, hands on
Shuffling
shoulder.
back and
In
forth.
other words, they actually went to Winter Formal and said, "Hey, do you mind if we shoot here?"
Yeah, hands on.
Yes.
You gotta leave space for Jesus.
If your chaperone could not fit between you and your dance partner.
But the main point of this is because Mia wants Light to kill as many people as possible, puts Light's hat on some random dude who wants to dance with her.
Yeah.
And,
She is hot.
Yep, and
And she knows it.
I 100% believe she just picked a guy out
Yeah,
so
100%.
she could give Light the opportunity to
slip away.
kill people. Because that turns her on in
Yeah.
this movie.
Oh, but she had also said, by the way, I wrote your name in the book. Your heart's going to stop beating at midnight. But if you give the book to me, I will
I'll burn the
burn that page, and you'll be fine.
That's why I didn't want you to burn Wataru's page.
Yeah, because
I'd already done that.
Watari is able to find the name right as time runs out, and Light had said to Ryuk when Ryuk asked the method of death, he said, "Dealer's choice, I don't care," because he planned on saving Watari, but Mia took the page so that Watari couldn't be saved, and so Watari is killed right before he can give the actual name.
The police break in and shoot him.
Yes.
While this is going on, Mia said, "You obviously don't have the spine for this. That's fine. I wrote your name in the book, and I will burn the page if you give me the death note, because I will be the new god of this
But
world."
then I wrote your name in the book, and if you give me the book, or if you take the book from me, then you will die.
So
Light doesn't tell her that,
skipping.
though.
We're skipping ahead a little bit.
Yeah,
But
yeah. Anyway, during the scene where Mia's admitting a lot of stuff, she also admits she killed all the FBI agents, which answers some questions you might have had.
yeah.
Yeah. I will give this movie 100% credit for actually explaining its mysteries.
One of the things that it's really good at, there's like that element in Death Note, there's this creeping tension of what's going to happen, and then the tension is released by an explanation of all the intricate details of the plan falling into place, and it doesn't happen very often in this movie. It mostly just happens when it basically twist reveals that Mia was the real villain all along, and then the very ending, which does the same thing but even better.
It doesn't matter. Because anyway, Light tells Mia, meet him at the Ferris wheel in Seattle, as he escapes the prom, where the FBI agents, and most importantly, L, because Watery just died.
Yeah, Elle is informed that Watery has been killed at this point.
The FBI agents no longer matter because Elle and Light have a Blade Runner chase sequence through a bunch of neon signs for like 10 minutes of the movie.
I called it Blade Runner, but it's Katana Zero. It is rhythmic club music set to violent chases through rainy streets.
What is Elle's gun?
Elle decides...
Elle has a laser rifle.
Well, no, because it has bullets, but
laser pistol.
After Watery dies, Elle takes out a briefcase where he opens it up, and there's some kind of cyberpunk gun with a bunch of bullets. After Elle has established he does not use guns, he thinks they're barbaric.
I don't use guns. I find them distracting. Anyway, and like he has that like timbre to his voice that's really fun to listen to.
But the second Watery dies, he throws away his morals.
He does not care about that anymore.
Yeah. And he chases after Light,
who is trying to, one, get away from the guy who is menacing him with a gun, and then also get to the pier
because he needs to meet up with Mia, because if he doesn't by midnight, he is going to die of a heart attack.
Yeah,
his heart will stop beating. This was one of the things that I found the most interesting, was because the whole Ryuk is the ultimate arbiter of death, he just does whatever the book says should happen, but he is the ultimate chooser. The book just said, Light Turner's heart will stop beating at midnight. That could be a heart attack. That could be him being shot.
Yeah.
That could be him getting in a horrible accident and bleeding out over 30 minutes. And so that made all of the scenes of Elle being able to perfectly chase him through the Seattle streets really tense. Because is Elle also being directed by the Death Note to hunt him down?
And it's great because the way this chase scene ends is Elle holds Light at gunpoint saying, I know you're Kira. I'm going to kill you because, like, that will end all of this. And
someone comes out into the alleyway and is like, what's going on? And Elle looks at him and says, I'm working with the police. This is Kira. I'm going to stop his rampage.
And that random passerby smacks Elle in the face with a 2x4 because he supported Kira. Because Kira in this movie has done a lot of good.
Kira in this movie has legions of cultish followers because he has been murdering criminals by the score. And he has a 400-person body count by the end of that montage.
And, like, world dictators who are, like, torturing people. Like, he's going after, like, very unambiguously awful people. And, like, there's another scene that's really great that doesn't... It kind of gets addressed in passing, but doesn't get really addressed very well in the manga and anime, where, you know, Light points out, I can't just kill anyone that someone says is a criminal because they could lie about it. The idea that, like, Light isn't presented as being wrong, like, he's presented as being a good person at heart, whereas Light Yagami is at the absolute most generous gray, and that's the absolute most generous, whereas Light Turner's a good kid who's a stupid teenager making a bunch of really bad decisions.
Well, we'll get to that.
Well, yeah, at least as far as the movie is presented up to this point.
Yeah, because he meets up with Mia on the Ferris wheel.
Yeah.
They get in the Ferris wheel together. They get to the top of the circle.
They get in the Ferris wheel. Light shoots the operating panel of the Ferris wheel.
He menaces the operator with
Elle's gun.
Cyberpunk gun for some reason.
And then it doesn't matter because once they get to the top of the Ferris wheel just breaks, and through a series of errors, everything malfunctioning causes Mia to be dangling out by Light's hand.
Well, no, one of the important things is Mia is like, give me my fucking book. And Light says, okay. And she takes the book from him and he says, God damn it, why did you take it? I was trying to convince you not to. Wait, why? Because I wrote your name in the book saying that if you took it from me, you would die. And this is prefaced by Ryuk standing on the roof of like a cotton candy stand or something going, swinging his hands as the Ferris wheel is breaking.
In other words, Ryuk's an asshole. But we knew this.
But yeah, so basically...
In the fun way.
Yeah.
Basically the scene is Mia is dangling by Light's hand. The book falls out of the Ferris wheel, And rather than keeping hold on Light's hand, she chooses to grab
for the book,
which causes her to lose grip on Light's hand and fall to her death. At which point, the page with Light's name on it falls out of the book and flies, after she hits the ground and dies, into a barrel of fire.
Yes.
Into a hobo burn barrel.
Yes.
Elle actually sees that happening. And it's like, this is...
Because Elle's been chasing them in a police car very badly this whole time.
Elle sees this, reads this, he is able to glance the writing right before it burns up, and he's like, ah.
And, like, this is actually a really brilliant scene, because, like, there's a lot of stuff that feels like contrivances, like, oh, his name happens, his page happens to come out of the book. But one of the really cool elements of this is that, it's totally in character for Mia to care more about the Death Note than not just Light's life, but her own life. She cares about the power that book gives her. So it's totally in character for her to reach for that book like that. But we'll find out later there's a bit more to the story than that.
I mean, not much later, because Light immediately goes into a coma.
Yeah.
Yeah, Light falls out of the Ferris wheel into the Seattle Bay.
And it's like, is his heart gonna stop because he drowns? But of course, that at this point, we see the page fall. This is the point where we see the page fall into the barrel, and the page burns, and we realize, that's a way that his heart could stop. But if the page is burned in time, he could get out and survive.
But it doesn't matter, because Light wakes up in a hospital bed, and his father, James Turner, is there. It's just like, I know you're Kira.
Yeah.
There's a bit of an interim scene before that where, as we said, Elle is not nearly as respected in this version as he is in the original source material, because everyone's like, do you think Light Turner is killing people in a coma? He's been in a coma for 2 weeks, and
2 days.
2 days. And Kira killings have still been happening. You're obviously wrong. Get out, or we will arrest you for all of the property damage you caused on your insane chase. And that
leave, you wacko!
I'm just saying, all this is Death Note permeating the collective subconscious. Really, I'd be just like, oh, you just planned this in advance.
Yeah.
And this is the point when we see someone...
A mysterious figure walks into Light's hospital room and places the Death Note on his chest and then walks away. Light wakes up, picks up the notebook, and slides it under his pillow to hide it.
And that's when his father walks in right after that.
And immediately sits down and goes, I know you're Kira.
And one of the really cool things is the thing he figures out. He says he puts the clipping of
Anthony Scaramucci or whatever
getting out of prison. He puts that on the bed in front of Light, and he says, I know you're Kira because I realized the guy who held up the store wasn't Kira's first victim. How did he fall on his steak knife? He asks, how did you do it?
To which
do
point,
you really want to know?
Light then explains the entire plan to his dad.
And
so, first of all, I wrote in the book that this one doctor who molested nurses would find me in the bay and revive me with the Heimlich maneuver before committing suicide.
And then put me into a medically induced coma. Because one thing I asked when they were saying, because the way it's presented to the audience is Light Turner is in a coma. He can't be Kira. And then it's then we see the notebook placed on his bed and he opens his eyes and I'm like, wait, how could he fake being in a coma? There are doctors. He'd have to have them all under control and then die, right? But then it's revealed medical-induced coma. All the pieces fall into place.
For 2 days. Yeah, this doctor that was molesting nurses will find me, revive me, put me in a medically induced coma for 2 days, and then commit suicide. And this other guy, who was a child predator, will find the notebook, write down the names of criminals that appear on the nightly news, so the killings keep happening while I'm in a coma, and then give me the book after 2 days, and then commit suicide.
And it also reveals that the way that it's presented in the Ferris wheel scene is that Light simply put Mia's name down in the Death Note, but Light reveals that he not only put Mia's name down, but that Mia would, when the book falls from the Ferris wheel, grab the page that has his name on it and rip it out of the book.
Mm-hmm.
And
because the book gives you complete control of a person for 48 hours before their death, so long as they follow the script of the book.
And as long as they don't do something that's impossible.
Which means that you can't have a shark kill a guy on a toilet, even though I think that's very funny.
That is a direct quote from Ryuk. It's great. One of the other things that we see at the end is that L is able to put together that there is another page of the Death Note in a calculus book in Light's room. I love the ambiguity of this ending, because it's pretty clear that, like, you know, me mentioning that Light, you know, in this movie, as he's been presented as a good kid making stupid decisions, I 100% believe that from Light's perspective, Mia was just as much of a villain as the dictators he was killing, and that's how he justified killing her. But that's not exactly, like, he is being an arbiter at that point, and the movie had, like, talked about, like, who is Kira to decide who lives and who dies. Like, that was one of the things that was addressed over the course of the movie. There's a lot of judgment in how favorably you see Light. This Light Turner is, like, he pulls together this very Light Yagami-esque plan, and it shows that it's not as simple as, you know, him being a good kid making stupid decisions, that maybe he does have a lot of darkness in him. And then we don't know for sure, because it cuts right before we'd see, L has the last page of the Death Note and is struggling on whether or not to put Light Turner's name on.
Yep. The movie actually double dips on that, because it cuts on that scene and also cuts on the scene of Light has just told his dad all of this about, and then Light says, well, aren't I the lesser of two evils?
Because that was a direct quote from his father.
Mm-hmm. To which Ryuk then, the movie actually ends on Ryuk's quote, haha, aren't humans interesting?
Yep. I love this, because it makes Light Turner kind of grow into Light Yagami.
In a lot of ways, yeah.
Yeah. He becomes the kind of nth dimensional thinking 15,000 steps ahead chess master that Light was in the anime.
And, like, again,
in a believable sense.
Yeah, I mentioned, it wouldn't make sense to have that character just, like, in this live-action movie because the level of reality is different, but that he earns that and he grows into that character. And then we're left with the ambiguity of, is he really the lesser of two evils? Or is his story right about to end in this instant? Because we don't know. It's very, very interesting.
So, we've reached the end of our viewing. Jay, hi, you've been rather quiet. I know you don't like this movie very much.
I feel lied to. That is my primary point.
Go ahead, speak your piece.
Okay, so, as I'm sure my co-host will agree, it is a good movie. It is. But why for so long I was so upset was the fact that I feel that the marketing of this particular movie was misleading, because I was expecting a live-action adaptation of the Japanese Death Note, which this was not. And also the fact they recycled a lot of the names from the Japanese original Death Note. And I'm like, these are not the same characters. So it was just, I liked the movie as it was presented. I did not like the fact that they just essentially tried to recycle, and in my mind, and this is only my mind, my perception, my viewpoint, like, tried to, like, rewrite the story of Death Note. I'm like, that's not Death Note. That is not the Japanese version of Death Note that I was expecting.
I agree in a lot of ways about the marketing and how that they did not what would present the movie best to a general audience. They tried to do the thing that would, like, get the most fans and thus the most money. I personally don't want to hold that against the movie. Like, I understand the feeling of betrayal, and I don't disagree. I don't want to hold that against the movie, and I also came into the movie knowing that that the marketing wasn't exactly particularly honest, and there is some level of, why did an American in Seattle name his kid Light? You know, like, changing Misa to Mia to make it make more sense. Like, we were making jokes about how, like, if his name was Kyle Turner, this would be so much less of a problem. It's a minor problem, but, like...
Let's be honest. What kind of Japanese name is Light?
Well, that's not unreasonable either. But, like,
Metaphors!
But it's, like, little things, like... Because, like, there were a lot of cases where characters' names did get changed. And, like, Mia isn't Misa... But Mia's also Mia, not Misa, like, you know, and it's, like, doing little things like, you know, changing Light's name, I feel would have been a better choice, but I don't think that it didn't ruin the movie for me, but again, I also have the advantage of I had already been told that this is very different from the source material, so I didn't get hit with the betrayal in the same way that Jay did.
Yeah. So, Matt and I do not feel the same level of betrayal. So we are going to pass on this particular discussion question and move on to the ubiquitous one. What is your favorite character? Wow, this is actually a difficult decision for me, because I absolutely love Ryuk. Willem Dafoe, again, killed it in every sense in this role. But
and
also,
a lot of background characters.
And a lot of background characters. But also, holy crap, L's actor killed it. He was...
Possibly light in the end.
Yeah, I believe in my heart that L's actor is a classic weeb from the early 20-aughts who was given the role of a lifetime and went as hard as he fucking could into it, and I respect that so much.
And, like, on top of it, pulled it off. Like, that love translated into a stellar performance.
Jacob!
Yeah, Jacob here. My favorite character, I'm gonna say solidly, is Ryuk, just because this Ryuk was so active and so different and so interesting. Like, even if the original Death Note didn't exist, man, any scene that Ryuk is in, he steals the show. But with that said, absolutely L was great. I loved Light Turner. Like, he's such a real smart guy character, and seeing him evolve into the maybe supervillain that, you know, the manga protagonist was like the end where all the pieces fell into place. His performance sold that for me.
He's the classic high intelligence, low wisdom character.
Yeah.
Because, again, he's a stupid teenager with a lot of brain power.
And I also want to shout out Mia. Mia was a solid villain. I just want to shout her out because she's a good character, not really on the favorite list. Detective Turner, Light's dad, facilitated so many great scenes that, like, built into the themes unique to this movie. Because it has, needless to say, a lot of overlap thematically with its source material. But, like, the way that Detective Turner and Light play off of each other created some really, really great scenes. But if you're talking about, like, one character standing on his own, Ryuk is, like, he steals the show.
Alright, Matt, favorite character?
I don't know. Mia's pretty good, because she is effectively an original character for this movie.
Yeah.
Because this definitely does shift the Death Note story into, like, kind of a high school horror series.
Yeah.
She's pretty good as an antagonist. I think if I had to pick a favorite character, though, Light Turner is a pretty good character. He's solid. He has a full, like, arc, like...
Really solid arc.
By the end, I'm not 100% sure he's a bad guy. Like, it's a pretty good arc for Light.
And I will say this, you know, a Death Note property has succeeded on whether or not you think Light is a villain or not. But that's my opinion. Jay.
Favorite character carries over from the original source material? I love L.
Why did you love L in this movie?
Because he's L. Like, for the same reason.
A fair assessment. It's L. What more do you want?
He has an energy to him that is very unique.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I vibe with L.
Yes. Yeah.
And it may be trash taste, but I actually like his taste in candy. I know, it's bad, I don't care.
I didn't like his taste in candy in this movie, but I just like
I like those sugar bone things. I know they're awful, but
they're
like
awful.
them.
They taste like chalk.
Yeah,
I like them, though.
The L in this movie only eats candy that is
like
not...
off-brand candy, and I'm like, man, I can expand your candy horizon.
Is that a euphemism, Jay?
Yes.
I should have seen that one coming.
Anyway.
Thank you once again for listening to the OverMangaCast and our No Read November.
As always, you can like, favorite, subscribe to us on your podcast app of choice or podcatcher, or if you like to comment, the YouTube channel at OverMangaCast. Comments are pretty good there. As always, we love hearing from you. Just any feedback is great. You can reach out to us at OverMangaCast at Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram as well. Mm-hmm. And then I think, unfortunately, we're watching more of these live-action movies for the rest of November. Sam, what are we watching next?
We're going into Attack on Titan. I am very scared.
I mean, we're 1-1 at this point. Let's see how this goes.
A horrible movie in Fullmetal Alchemist, a great movie in Death Note. What are we going to do in Shingeki no Kyojin? I have no idea.
So join us next week, for you guys at least. We get to experience this horror all in one go.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
I'm gonna have to change clothes.